Welcome in, everyone, to the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, Hank Garner. And today, I am really excited to welcome I'm stepping all over myself, Robin Merle to the show. Robin has a brand new book. It's been out about a week now. It's called A Dangerous
Mhm.
Friendship. And what a fantastic book. I can't wait to talk all about it. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you, Hank. I'm glad to be here.
I am excited to have you. Robin, I have a list of questions that
Uh-oh.
I like to pick a couple from this list that I've put together, and just to kind of icebreakers and to kind of set the tone uh, for the kind of conversation we're going to have, and they're just quick draw questions. Elaborate as much as you want, but don't feel obligated. These are just kind of to get things started. The first one is, what is the first story that you remember writing that made you feel like a writer?
Okay. It wasn't a story,
Okay.
but I was in elementary school, and the teacher had asked us to draw a self portrait, which I did. And then she said, "Now write a few lines about yourself." And I
Okay.
did, and I handed it in. And then the next thing I knew, she was inviting other teachers, and they were staring at what I had written and they were laughing. And I thought, what the heck did I write? And this happened over and over again. And I went up to her and I said, "Well, why are you all laughing at what I wrote?" And she said, "Oh, because because you ended your little description with the words, 'Thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you.'" And I thought, okay, if I can get people to laugh, maybe I'll just keep writing. So that was my first real memory of having people pay attention to what I had written.
That is fantastic. Actually, that's one of the better responses that I've ever gotten to that. Um,
Okay.
another one is, what is the best piece of writing advice you ever received, and did you take that advice or did you act upon it?
You know, I have a thing about advice.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
this is going to
I
be good.
think
Let me settle in.
even my own, and
Okay.
I wrote a book before this, which is basically an advice book, and
Yeah.
you really have to know the people who are giving you the advice.
Right. Right.
And then, and then you consider whether you take it or not. I honestly cannot remember anything so serious that it rocked my world.
Mm,
But so I probably got a D minus on that question,
yeah.
but that's what I would say.
No, I totally understand what you're saying, Robin, because I really wrote my first novel before. I'm thinking back now because I don't want to misspeak,
Mhm.
but I really feel like I wrote my first novel before really trying to dig into what it meant to be a
You see,
novelist.
you just
Yes,
did it.
now
Uh-huh.
I had written a column for my local newspaper, so it was kind of an opinion column, um, but that's different than writing
Mhm.
fiction,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
and I feel like I had sort of solidified who I was as a writer before starting to find out what other people had to say. Now then, of course, I built upon that and I took
Right.
other people's good experiences and bad experiences
Mhm.
and let that filter and shape who I was as a writer. But I really think I built my foundation before getting any outside input. So I really appreciate that answer.
Yeah, I'm sure you did, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that was the best part and the most fun part, and you really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. One more quick question.
Okay.
Do you believe in writer's block? And if you do, what do you do to remedy it or to unstick yourself?
When I would say when I was younger, maybe. I also have a thing about labels because I think they make our thinking too narrow.
Sure.
But I have been writing something my whole life. I've been a professional writer, a
Yeah.
ghostwriter, a speech writer, and every kind of writer. And so it's just something I do the same way that um, the same way that you do other activities. So if I get stuck, what do? Typically, I get up, I walk away, and I do something physical
Mhm.
because that's a big release. And I also know by now myself that when I'm walking around or I'm doing something like that, the blood
Mhm.
starts to flow, the brain starts to go. I
Yeah.
carry my phone with me, I dictate stuff. And so I kind of get around that vision that I know that other people have spoken about where they're just sitting there with a blank screen or
Mhm.
blank paper. No, just get up and walk away. That's what I say. It's just the moment that you try to that's blocking
Right.
you, not the whole gestalt of it.
Yeah, and, I found that when you're in that moment and you're stuck, and
Mhm.
then all you can think about is being stuck, and
That's
you're
right.
better just get up, walk away, and go do something else, and then let your subconscious mind start, untying the knots and all of that stuff. And I guess some of that
Absolutely.
is just, you know, learning to trust the process, and knowing that if I
Right.
walk away, my brain's going to keep working on it, whether I'm engaged or not. And really, that's the freeing part, is realizing that it's not all about the concentrated effort of the moment.
And now I'm going to contradict myself and say that's a great piece of advice, Hank.
I know.
Trust the process.
Right, right.
It will come back to you. Something new will happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. So, Robin, looking at your bio and doing a little
Mhm.
digging into you before we started, um, you have a fascinating story of your personal story, and
Okay.
I've done more than 3,000 author interviews in the last decade and a half, and I have said before that out of those 3,000 people, I could probably count on two hands the amount of people who their sole dream was to be a novelist, and
Mhm.
everything that they ever did was in pursuit of that dream. Probably 10 people out of that's the only thing they ever did. The wild majority of people, take a circuitous route. They collect some life experience over here, and they dabble in this job or that job, and all of those things contribute to the toolbox that we draw upon as writers. Um, wh- what what have you been doing professionally that led you up to this point? And looking back, can you see that circuitous route that brought you to where you are now?
Well, I was an English major in college because I
Okay.
love to read. And I had such a good time in college, and it came to senior year, and I thought, oh, I really don't want to start working. What can I do? And I realized, well, I can write. So that's about how deliberate it was. And so I got into the writing program and MFA at Johns Hopkins.
Okay.
And it was like my facts are probably wrong, but I think it was like the second or third in the country. I had no idea what I was doing. And there were people there that were quite serious about being
Yeah.
writers. There were 14 fiction writers, including me, and 14 poets. I did
Okay.
not have enough experience to write about. It was a really pivotal experience because I realized, gee, this is something that people, as you said, out of those 3,000, that,
Mhm.
those handful really want to pursue. So, but I still wanted to write. Did I want to be a
Mhm.
novelist? Not necessarily. I was really a
Sure.
short story writer.
And I think that's a very good distinction, that
Mhm.
there is the art of writing, of storytelling.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's fiction writing, sometimes it's novels, sometimes it's short story, sometimes it's copywriting for
Uh-huh.
an advertising firm or a nonprofit or whatever it is. It's all storytelling.
Right. And that's basically what I did. I was on the creative side for an ad agency. And as I like to say, I wanted to use words that were bigger than three letters, new, now, but, and I saw an ad for a writer at NYU.
Okay.
And I said, wow, I could just write the whole time. And so I started writing for nonprofit, and that's really how my nonprofit career started. Now, during that time, I was still writing fiction,
Mhm.
and I mainly trying to get my short stories published, which I was able to do. But I really had not contemplated writing a novel. I mean, that's quite a commitment. That's a long short story. So, but I think I'm in that big group that you mentioned that took a circuitous route to being where I am now.
Yeah. I love that you started writing short stories. I am a
Mhm.
lover of short stories, and I love the form of the short story.
Yeah.
And I love Ray Bradbury's advice that he used to give people that he would say, if you're serious about it, about writing fiction of any form, you should start writing short stories, and you should write a different short story every week of the year. And he would
Mhm.
kind of quip that, surely you can't write 50 bad short stories in a row. You'll figure it out along the way, which is kind of tongue in cheek, but there's a lot of truth to that
Uh-huh.
the repetition makes you better. The gaining experience makes you better. What
Does.
is it about the form of short stories that really intrigues you? And because, like you said, the short story and the novel are very different. They
Mhm.
serve different purposes. They do different things for the reader, but also for the writer. What is it about the form that you really love?
Oh, they just capture the essence of an emotion, a feeling, or an
Mm,
action so brilliantly.
yes,
I love first lines and I love last
me too.
lines. And, in these stories, when I go through them and when I write them myself, and I don't know where I'm going, but when I get to that last part and it ties it all together, I'm like, wow, I nailed it. I just think they just capture an emotion, and sometimes they're so riveting and they move you, and you're not really sure why. They're mysterious in many ways. They really can be mysterious. And so I just love the short form. And I remember I discovered flash fiction a little
Hmm.
bit ago, right? Where it's short, short, short.
Right.
And so I tried my hand at writing that, and that was so much fun. And to really get to, the punchline at the end and why someone's been taken through this path to get to this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Um, you're absolutely right that a short story encapsulates an
Mm.
emotion, a feeling, um, and you don't. I think some of the best short stories don't necessarily have to fully resolve. It's
I think
okay
that's
if
true.
they leave you hanging a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And what you said about it being mysterious, and you
Hmm.
you have the room. I don't know if it's that the reader brings that expectation with them that I don't need everything exactly wrapped up at the end. And the great thing for me about the short story is that a lot of times it can kind of linger, and these characters can stay in
True.
your brain, and you can think about them and live with them for a while. And that's something that very few novels can accomplish. I don't know if it's because we bring this expectation with us that if we're going to spend 400 pages with something, I kind of want to know, what's going to happen. I don't know. Do you think that it has more to do with what the reader brings to it, or is it just kind of understood in the form of the short story that these things are acceptable? Is there a contract between the reader and the writer? What do you think about that?
Well, I think, any good experience needs a partnership between a reader and a writer. It's just a
Sure.
different kind of experience, where one's a long-term stay at the Residence Inn and the other is a motel. And, you, And it's it, it's interesting since you're bringing this topic up, but I have reread many short stories over and over and over again, much less than I've reread novels.
Sure.
And, a couple of them, old classic J.D. Salinger's nine stories, unforgettable stories. I read them again and again. And I think if somebody hasn't read that book, how could you not read that book? It's just so, it encapsulates the time, the thinking, everything about it. And, I'm also a big fan of Grace Paley's short stories
Mm.
and her collection, Enormous Changes at the Last Minute, which I say frequently in my life. And the irony that she's able to get to, all of that. So I don't think I answered your question, because I don't think whatever I answered today, I might change tomorrow. I don't know.
And and
That's the
and
answer.
that's
I don't know.
I didn't know that. I didn't know either. It just
Yeah.
when you find someone who loves the form like that,
Yeah.
you ask the questions that you always want to ask.
Great.
Um, yeah. How did you come to write a nonfiction book? Because the book that you published
Ah,
before this one was a nonfiction book. What's the story behind that, and what was your purpose that you had in mind?
well, as we've talked about, I have always written to all types of things. It's my go-to when something happens to
Mhm.
me. And so I had been, as I say, the book is called Involuntary Exit: A
Okay.
Woman's Guide to Thriving After Being Fired.
Mm.
And I had been, the A plus hard driving woman, who was very loyal to where I worked. And so when I was let go, I went to write, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And then I said, well, I have to talk to some other women who've had the same experience. And I did. And so the book began to take shape in that way. But the book is also, we were talking about short stories. It's a lot of stories put together. And it's all about grieving the loss of a job. So it goes into the emotional aspect of loss in a way that, these guides about doing your resume, that has nothing to do with how you really feel when you're jettisoned from a company.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that going on now, and people don't really know. We haven't really we they don't have a class in school about how to deal with being let go. So in many ways, it used my fiction skills and my storytelling skills, in a nonfiction book. And I really think that's why it speaks to so many, because they can feel themselves, they feel seen, they feel heard, they understand the story of what's happening to them.
Gotcha. Um, when you decided to write that book, or when you were
Mhm.
writing and then realized that a book was coming out of it, because sometimes that's a surprise, when you start
Right,
writing and you're like, "Oh, this is something that someone else might wanna read."
right.
Like, when it started taking shape, what was your plan for it? And, like, the publishing and, like, how did you navigate those waters?
Well, first I want to say it was interesting when it started to take shape when I went to some lunches and people would tell me their stories, and I then said, "Can I interview you?" And I went back, or we went to these dark wine bars and told our secrets and our stories, and I recorded them, and I wrote them, and that's how the book started to take place. Now, in terms of um, finding a publisher, I first what I did was find a lawyer, and I said, because there's a lot of NDA, non-disclosure agreements, and all sorts of legal stuff
Sure.
surrounding this, and I wanted to be safe, and I wanted to keep everybody in the book safe. And I found somebody who was a literary media lawyer, and she said to me, first she sent it to her agent friend, and they wanted a different kind of book than what I wanted to write. And then she said that she had, if I wanted to go this route, she had heard Brooke Warner speak at the Organization of Independent Publishers, and she was really impressive. And why don't I reach out to She Writes Press? So my lawyer tried to make an introduction. They said, no, she has to go through the same vetting process as everybody else. I had to submit, I had to be accepted,
Sure.
and I was. And that started me on, being a big fan of She Writes Press. And Brooke Warner has now gotten to the point where we're distributed by Simon and Schuster. And she also puts together a manual, an author's handbook, which is like a college course in publishing. It's really something. And I will say, what I realized, the transition from being a writer to an author is a transition from being a wordsmith to an entrepreneur. One is
Well said.
business, the
Yeah.
other is writing, and they're very different worlds, very different.
Well said. Well said. Um, so you published the nonfiction book.
Yep.
Um, what then is the catalyst to tell this fictional story? And did this begin as a short story since you're a fan of the form, or did you know from the beginning this is going to be a longer work?
Okay. Funny you should ask. So I I wrote this book over 30 years ago. I did.
Okay.
And I had agents try to sell it. Wasn't the right time for the book. I had to earn a living. I put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
Um, I knew it was a novel when I wrote it. I mean, I would it just like the other book. I write pretty quickly, and then revise endlessly. And so after my first book was published by She Writes, my husband said, "You've got to take that off the shelf. You've got to get that published." No, 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 no. And I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he actually started retyping chapters for me. I said, okay, that's enough. So
Okay. Get away from my book.
that's right. So I will do it. So I did it. And then I said, this would be really great for She Writes. Let me see if they'll take it. And they did. They did.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that's actually fascinating because I was going to ask you, what was the impetus behind setting this in the 1980s? Well, that kind of
Yeah. I lived in the city in the 1980s and I loved it. I still love it. But yeah, but that energy, that vibe, that anything is possible, experience in the city, it's almost like a character in the book, to tell you the truth.
yeah. Well, since you and this is fascinating. I didn't know that this was a 30-year-old manuscript when you started revisiting the book.
Uh-huh.
Was there much revision that took place, or are
Yes.
the bones of the story kind of what they were there, or was it just an idea that survived?
No, the bones of the story was there.
Okay.
The whole story was there.
Okay.
But I chunked out a lot of
Yeah.
things, I mean, because you write something, you put it down, you revisit it, and you're like, well, wait a minute, this needs to be cut, this needs to be polished, this doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. So there was a lot of revision again and again and again. And I don't mind revising, because each time I read it, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is really interesting. Oh, I don't remember writing that. Oh, that's a good line. Oh, that's a terrible line. Things like that. And I've always tried to look at my writing as if I'm somebody else that, reading it. And this
Yeah.
is true for anything that I put together, because it's always about, to me, the audience. And so the bones were definitely there. I will say it changed titles. It changed the. It didn't change the ending. I nailed that ending in the beginning, and I kept it. But I think I did something. I think I led up to it a little bit better by the time I finished it.
When I write a novel, a short story, whatever, I always know the beginning, and I think writing
Yeah.
intros, first chapters is always so much fun to me because there's,
Yeah.
that's where all of the dynamics for the book, begin. And I always know where the story's going to end. Now, I don't know always how they're going to connect, but I
Yeah.
kind of know at least that ending emotion, the kind of what
Right.
what the reader's going to feel at the end. You said that you kept the beginning and the end. Did do you when you're writing the book in the first place, do you
Uh-huh.
know how the ending is gonna happen? Like, what do you come into a novel with?
Do I know how the ending is going to happen? Um, well, here's what happens. I don't outline. I've always been very, if somebody wants an outline, I'll write it after the book is finished, just to say,
Yeah.
okay, here's my outline.
Right.
But I have points. I have like GPS points,
Sure.
places I want to get to
Yes.
in the story, things that I want to make happen in the story. And so I wanted to make something happen toward the end. And the way I wrote the ending was really made me happy.
Love it. Love
Mhm.
it. Stephen King in his book on writing suggests that when you finish a first draft, you should take that novel, stick it in a desk drawer, and
Right.
go do something else for like 6 weeks.
Or 30
And
years.
or 30 years,
Yeah.
the but a lot of people they'll be really on fire for the book and don't wanna
Uh-huh.
wait 6 weeks. They wanna get into it and finish it and all of that, and invariably, if you can wait those 6 weeks and come back to it, you will spot things that you
Oh,
couldn't
totally.
see,
Mhm.
when the passion of the original writing happens. 30 years later, when you came back to it, could you
Uh-huh.
feel that original, fire and emotion that you had for this story? Did you reconnect with it in that way?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
was it like experiencing a whole new thing all over again?
Oh, no. I there's a lot of dialogue in this book, okay? Because I've also written plays and poems, and there's a lot of dialogue, and I would hear that dialogue all the time, and I would, and it was very entertaining. Most of the stuff that I chunked out were things that didn't advance the plot, so to speak. I mean, you know this. You can write something brilliant, beautiful, gorgeous, and then you're like, "Oh, I can't use this." I always keep something, I call it an outtakes file for those pieces of writing that I love, but they really aren't serving the purpose of the story. So I put those aside, but the passion was still there because the voices were still there. I could hear the voices, speaking of Stephen King, but the, there's also a lot of music in this book, which to me goes with the dialogue.
Yeah.
And I have a playlist for this book, just like I had a playlist for my other book. But music is a big motivator for me. And there's a scene in the book where there's just dancing and music at a club, and people who read the book 30 years ago never forgot that scene. So it was
Oh, I
really
love that.
pumping with passion. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Your 2 main characters in the book are writers, and
Yeah.
this is a guilty pleasure for a lot of writers is to write about writers, and I have a book, it's called Writer's Block, where I the main character is a writer, and it's so fun to, kind of explore the neuroses of writers, and to kind of, poke fun a little bit, but
Uh-huh.
also to embody this place that most people don't get to visit and get to live. What is the fun for you about writing about writers?
Oh, it's a lot of what you just said, but let me summarize it in this way. So one of the writers reads another writer's story, and she's horrified by the story, and she said, "She doesn't actually think like that, right? That's just a character she inhabits when she writes like that, right?" And it's sort of, and that's the feeling, like that's not really who they are. These are just um, characters they inhabit that enable them to do this kind of writing. So it's just, it's writing about a world I know,
Yeah.
and with all the questions that I have, that probably you have, that everybody has about the creative process.
Yeah. At the end of this book, when
Mhm.
someone finishes the book and they close that back cover, what do you hope the reader is left with?
Wow. And I've heard that. I've gotten emails. Wow. Um, but to be a little bit more philosophical, I would say that I want the readers to think about their own journeys and a path they took that wasn't planned and how it shaped them.
Perfect. Perfect. Robin, if people are just discovering you and want to get into, all that you're about and all that you do, where is a good place online for them to connect with you?
My website, which is theprofessionalguide.com, and I named it that after writing the first book. They can also find me on LinkedIn, Robin Merle, and also on Instagram at Robin Merle TPG for the Professional Guide. So they can find me there.
Perfect. We'll link all that up to make it easy for folks to
Thank
find you.
you.
Robin, the new book, A Dangerous Friendship, is available now. We'll put links to it in the show
Yep,
notes where you can grab it. This has been so much fun chatting. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
it's been great. Thanks, Hank.
Thanks.